So, what was the last really good decision you made? And are you sure it was good because you were smart, or did you just get lucky? We're going to dive into some powerful ideas from Annie Duke's How to Decide that will completely change how you answer that question.
Okay, first up, a quick thought experiment for you. Imagine you quit your job and take a new one, and it works out perfectly. I mean, you love the work, the people are great, and you even get a promotion within a year. Was taking that job a good decision? I think most of us would say, yeah, of course it was.
All right, now let's rewind the clock. It's the exact same moment in time. You have the exact same information. You make the same choice to take the new job, but this time it's a total disaster. You hate it and you're laid off. Was it a good decision now? If you just switched your answer from yes to no, well, you're definitely not alone.
But think about it for a second. The process you used to decide was identical in both scenarios. The only thing that changed was the result. When we judge the quality of a decision based purely on how it turned out, we're falling for a really powerful cognitive bias called resulting.
Resulting is basically a mental shortcut. Our brains love to keep things simple, so they just connect the dots. Good outcome means good decision, bad outcome means bad decision. It feels right, it feels intuitive, but it is a terrible way to learn from experience, because it totally ignores the massive role of luck and focuses only on what happened, not why it happened.
To really get why our brains do this, let's use a brilliant metaphor from the book, something called decision forestry. It perfectly explains how our minds twist reality after the fact.
Okay, look at this. Before you make a decision, the future looks like a tree with all these branches. Each branch is a possible outcome. Some are thick and super likely. Others are just tiny, improbable little twigs. But in that moment, you can see this whole multiverse of possibilities.
But the second one of those outcomes actually happens, our brain fires up a cognitive chainsaw, and it just hacks off every other branch, every other thing that could have happened, leaving only the one that actually did. All those other potential futures, they're just lying on the ground, totally forgotten.
And with just that one branch left standing, the past suddenly feels so obvious, predetermined, inevitable. This is hindsight bias in action, and it's an absolute disaster for learning, because we can no longer see the outcome in the right context, which is against all the things that might have happened instead.
So, how do we fight back? How do we put down that cognitive chainsaw? Well, the first tool is surprisingly simple. We just need to be way more precise with our language.
Let's look at a super high-stakes example. During the Bay of Pigs invasion, President Kennedy was told that the plan had a fair chance of success. He gave it the green light and, well, it was a complete and utter failure. A huge part of the problem was hiding right there in that one little phrase.
I mean, what does fair chance actually mean to you? Is that like 30%, 50%, 65%? Turns out, the person who wrote the assessment thought it meant about 25%. But Kennedy heard that phrase and thought it was much, much higher. And that simple misunderstanding had massive consequences.
And this isn't just a problem for presidents. The vague words we use every single day create what you could call a land of confusion. A phrase like real possibility could mean 20% to one person and 80% to their coworker. We think we're communicating, but we're living in totally different realities.
So what's the solution? Force yourself to use percentages. Instead of saying it's likely, say, I think there's a 70% chance of success. It immediately forces clarity. It uncovers where you and your team actually agree or disagree, and that's the crucial first step to making a better decision.
Okay, so once we're talking more clearly, the next step is to make sure we're thinking clearly. We need a tool to help us break free from our own little bubble, our own biased point of view.
So here we have this battle between what's called the inside view and the outside view. The inside view is our story. It's unique to us. We tell ourselves, our marriage is going to last forever because our love is special. And it feels true, right? But the outside view pulls the camera back and just looks at the data. What happens to other people in similar situations? It's a dose of reality that helps ground our personal feeling.
This outside view data has a name. It's called a base rate, and it's just the statistical probability of something happening for a given group. It's not about you personally, it's about the world at large, and it's an incredibly powerful tool for reality checking our own natural optimism.
For instance, you might feel like your new restaurant has a 90% chance of making it. But what happens when you learn the base rate, that most new restaurants fail? That's a pretty crucial reality check. We all have this tendency to think we're better than average, but base rates force us to ask a really tough question. What exactly makes me so different from all the other people who tried this and failed?
All right, now for a master technique that pulls all these ideas together in a super practical and powerful way. It's called the premortem, and it's basically a way of systematically planning for failure.
So instead of just hoping for the best, a premortem asks you to do the exact opposite. You get to time travel into the future, imagine your project has already failed spectacularly, and then your job is to tell the story of why it failed. It's a postmortem, but you do it in advance.
The process is simple, but really powerful. First, you imagine the failure. Then, you work backward and list all the possible causes. You separate the things that were within your control, like poor execution, from the things that were outside your control, like bad luck or a sudden market shift. This lets you see all these vulnerabilities in your plan that were basically invisible before.
What's really amazing is using this with a team. It completely flips the dynamic of groupthink. You know how everyone in a meeting tries to be agreeable and positive? Well, with a premortem, the goal is to be the best at finding reasons for failure. All of a sudden, the naysayer, the person who spots problems, becomes the most valuable person in the room.
So when we put all these tools together, avoiding resulting, using probabilities, getting that outside view, and running premortems, what's the single biggest change? What's the new mindset we should have?
It all boils down to this: stop judging decisions, your own and other people's, based on the outcome. A great result can come from a terrible process. That's just called dumb luck. And a terrible result can come from a fantastic process. That's just called bad luck. The goal isn't to get lucky. The goal is to have a high-quality process every single time.
And that leaves us with one final, challenging question. It's pretty easy to analyze our failures, right? But the real test is analyzing our successes. The next time you get a big win, will you have the discipline to look past that great result and still ask yourself, what could we have done better in our process? Because that is where the real learning begins.